Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your artificially unintelligent hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC. And when there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. Today's episode is all about them AIs going completely nutso. First I'll talk about the valiant soldiers from 86, not the year 1986, but show 86, who are doing their best to protect a republic that oppressed them and threw them into a meat grinder from a flood of AI-controlled war machines. And after that, John and I will travel through time to accompany the artificial songstress diva/Vivy on her mission to change history and stop humanity from going extinct by the hands of, once again, rogue AIs. Looks like you will get a lot of sci-fi bang for your apocalypse buck, so don't pause the pod, we'll be right back. According to the Republic of Sun Magnolia, their ongoing war against the Giadian Empire has no casualties. Though it initially suffered a devastating losses to the Empire's autonomous mechanized legions, the Republic has since developed its own autonomous units called Juggernauts, which are directed remotely by a handler. However, that is mere propaganda. While the silver-haired Alba of the Republic's 85 sectors live safely behind protective walls, those of different appearances are interned in a secret 86th faction. Known within the military as the 86, they are forced to fight against the Empire's autonomous legion, treated like subhuman tools who only exist to feed the machinery of war and maintain the status quo. Vladilena Milize, a young major in the San Magnolian army, is assigned to the so-called spearhead squadron to replace their previous handler. Shunned by her peers for being an 86 supporter, she continues to fight against their inhumane discrimination. Her idealistic views are, however, tested by the Spearhead Squadron and their captain, Shine Nozen, who has earned his call name Undertaker in more ways than one. The cynical war-experienced members of Spearhead don't have any love for their oppressors, consider Lena as bad as the rest of her people, and don't intend to treat her as anything but a naive, silver-haired pig. When the fates of these young souls from two different worlds collide, will it ignite the spark that lights their path to salvation? Or will they burn themselves in the flames of despair? Alright, 86 is based on a light novel by Asato Asato, a pen name which is apparently a combination of her real name and 88. Why 88? I have no idea. The light novel started publication in February 2017, so far counts 10 volumes and is still ongoing. There are multiple manga adaptations, or at least one straight manga adaptation, and a couple of one-shots. The manga adaptation itself counts 3 volumes, started in February 2018, is still going, and that and the one-shots are all handled by Asato herself. So this whole thing, this whole 86 project is definitely her baby. Though I don't know how heavily she was involved in the creation or the adaptation on the anime side of things. She is, of course, listed as an original creator, but I don't know how heavily she was involved in the actual process. The illustrations in the manga are always handled by someone else, but she has the sole writing credit. So there you go. The anime series is handled by A1, which have come up many times in our show, definitely on a lot of light novel-based series as well, Sword Art Online probably being the biggest one.
Mm.
I knew this would raise your ire, John.
You know what, though? When A1 does a good job, they do a good job, so...
Absolutely, and they did here, especially if not only in the animation department. 86 is directed by Toshimasa Ishii, and this is his first full-time director gig. He has storyboarded on SAO, Promised Neverland, Beastars, and directed a couple of episodes on 7 Deadly Sins and Erased as well. And the animation is pretty damn great, especially the 2D stuff. Like, all the character models are super sharp, never off model, the backgrounds are super detailed, the environments are super lush, the colors are bright and everything, nice contrast, everything looks really good. There definitely went some budget into this. I assume 86, the light novel, is very popular. And, that shows. It's the same thing for Sword Art Online. Like, that shit, like, sells gangbusters, and A1 knows it, and the production committee knows it. So there's a lot of manpower and budget thrown at these projects, and I think 86 is another one of those. The frame rate can get quite choppy on the CG, because it's your usual anime CG stuff, and all the mecha in this show is CG. But there are definitely some cool camera angles and tracking shots that compensate for that kind of stuff. The drone/tanks look like big bugs or spiders with guns, very similar to the Tachikomas in Ghost in the Shell. They have only 4 legs though. And the battles are pretty cool. But besides the small text on the side, these tanks, or juggernauts as they are called here, are so indistinguishable from another that it's hard to keep track of who we currently see fighting. So it's a bit hard to get fully invested into the fights. I mean, it's still always dramatic. There's some cool shit happening, and, cool action, explosions everywhere, and some really harsh moments. And you always know after the fact who got hit and who got exploded and hyper killed by some giant opposing mecha. But I would have liked to have some visual indication aside from, oh, this is definitely Undertaker because he does like this crazy choreography bullshit because he's so experienced as a pilot and is a fucking devil. But aside from that, I never really knew who was piloting what unit. Aside from some units being more specialized in sniping, some units being more close combat focused. But yeah, it's really hard to really keep track of, okay, who is in that Juggernaut, who is in that Juggernaut. So I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to color them in, specific colors to make it look more realistic, but there should have been, I don't know, there should have been some more visual indication. I feel like it's never too confusing, but it's like, okay, like these all look the fucking same. There's no difference between these things. So yeah, keep that in mind. The soundtrack in the show is by Sawano. Good old Hiroyuki Sawano. So you won't be disappointed there if you like his particular thing. And I do. So I also think this soundtrack is god tier. Both the somber, quiet, and sad moments and the kick-ass battle scenes get elevated through his compositions. This is what he does. And he doesn't disappoint in this one either. And yeah, story-wise, this is interesting. This is a war story. This is pretty much we reviewed that show, but if you've seen Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, you have a good idea what is coming for you when you are watching this show, because this kind of goes into the same territory. We don't really have mercenaries here, but they kind of are as well. They are not really well compensated for their efforts, because they are, oppressed people. They are ostracized, they are shunned, they are put in a special district and treated as subhuman garbage. But aside from that, it really feels in parts very much like Iron-Blooded Orphans. You got a lot of very young-ish people, young kids, mostly teenagers and tweens, who are thrown into the meat grinder of war. And a bunch of them die. This happens in Iron-Blooded Orphans, and this happens here as well. There are a bunch of red flags, just death flags, just immediately from the get-go in this show. And at least in the beginning, like, every person that gets the spotlight in an episode dies in the same episode. At least that's what it felt to me. They changed that up a bit later, but it's like, yeah, okay, you don't want to be focused on when it comes to your characterization, because that means you are dead meat. And yeah, like the spearhead unit we meet at the beginning of the show gets decimated pretty severely over the course of the 2/3 of the season, which is, I wouldn't call it cool, but, which is nice that things are getting so serious in this show. But only 1 or 2 deaths are really impactful, because the episodes focus only on a couple of core characters, really. Everyone who isn't from that circle of people just feels a bit like a red shirt, which, of course, might be the intent, because, the 86s are cannon fodder, after all. Still seeing only a couple of characters sitting in the canteen when at the beginning of the show it's like this very crowded, lively place, and then later it isn't anymore. It's just like I think some 6 characters or something. It's a powerful, sobering image. And I think that's cool. I would have liked for the show to maybe go a bit longer and maybe actually go in depth on some more of the characters. You know, like I said, some of them get a spotlight where it's like, hey, they get a few more scenes of dialogue here and there, and you learn a bit about their past and so on before they bite the bullet. But it doesn't happen that much. And sometimes people just die and you're like, wait, who was that again? Again, you could argue that's how, you know, that works in regards to how they wanted to portray war. It's like, hey, you barely get to know these people, just like Lena is, who is our point of view character, kinda. It's kind of split in two. But she also just met these people and then they die before her eyes, basically. So, yeah, it works. It's just like, if you stretch this out a bit longer, made this a 26 episode season or something, then maybe some of these deaths would have felt more meaningful. But then again, they're working with source material, so I don't know how much time is actually put into these characters in the light novel. If things got shortened, if things got extended on, I don't know. Might either be the case. Anyway, like I said in the introduction, the story follows the new youngest female major in the army of the Republic of San Magnolia, Vladilena Milize, or short Lena. And she takes over the post of a handler for the spearhead unit. A unit that is infamous for kind of going through a lot of handlers. Because either a lot of them resign after a short while or even kill themselves.
Oh.
Yeah, which is weird because as we learned, how these things work is basically the handlers sit in a comfy little command room in the main capital of San Magnolia. And command basically have like these tactical screens where they see all the stuff from the radar and everything and can basically tell the 86ers where to go. And yeah, you're wondering like, okay, what comes in through the fucking headphones and everything that makes them want to fucking kill themselves? And a lot of that seems to be related to Shin, the captain of the spearhead unit, also called Undertaker. Like I said, for more than one reason. And yeah, that's one of the mysteries where it's like, hey, okay, what does he do that has this effect on the handlers? And will Lena be able to literally handle it? So yeah, that's one of the things where it's like, oh, this is interesting. So somehow that guy manages to like turn things around and on the people that are kind of being assholes and just treating him and his unit just like fucking tools. So that's interesting. I want to see how that happens. And this is actually how the show starts. It's like you see Shin going at it, like destroying an opposing battalion of these autonomous Legion mecha. And you hear their previous handler over their intercom. And in the beginning, he's like, yeah, fight them and die for me, you fucking pigs. Right? He's like this real piece of shit. And then as things progress, like more and more seconds pass, and he's like, no, stay away. Oh my God. It's like completely losing it. And the only thing you see is Shin fighting, and it feels like he's fighting his handler in a way. And like, what is going on? Super weird. But yeah, there's a specific reason for that, which I can't tell you because that's a very heavy spoiler. In fact, there are a lot of things I could say that would be considered very heavy spoilers because the show has a lot of twists and turns, surprisingly, especially when it comes to the setup of the world and things you later learn about the opposing forces and everything. And yeah, I don't want to take that away from you because there's some really weird, some really dark, weird shit in this show that later gets revealed where I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And yeah, that was part of the fun. That's one of the reasons why I would recommend you watching it if you are in the mood for that kind of show. But yeah, Lena is kind of different from her peers in that she is very much on the side of the 86s. She says like, no, these are humans and we're treating them like garbage. We need to change this. I want to build a good relationship with them. I want to educate our ignorant cadets. She wants everyone to acknowledge the 86ers. And she has some leeway because her uncle is a higher up in the army command. But, you know, she can only push him so far and her agenda so far before it becomes a problem. So she always walks this tightrope before her attitude gets her into trouble. In the beginning, like I said, she wants to build a good relationship with the 86ers because she was saved by a processor, which is what they call, I think, the main person the handlers are in contact with from each respective unit. So Shin is her processor, who she says was proud to fight for his country. And she thinks that it's not fair that the Alba, who is like this ruling race, literally race in San Magnolia, that they don't acknowledge the deaths of the 86, which made me think, idealism aside, you don't think it's worse that they are forced to fight in general? Who, you know, it's nice that you want to acknowledge their deaths, but how about not making them fight your war at all?
But if they don't fight the war for us, who will?
Yeah, exactly. Which is, of course, is the idea behind the whole thing. And that's her thing. And she's like, okay, my ideal is that that they get acknowledged and they get rewarded for their stuff. And the propaganda also says that the war will only last for so long, like 2 more years or something, they say, because then the energy cells or something, or the artificial brain in the autonomous opposing forces will self-destruct or shit like that. And immediately from the get-go, you're like, yeah, that's probably not the truth. That's probably not going to happen, because when some professor tells that to the new cadets, he shoots like this nervous glance at an army officer sitting like in the shadows in the back, who gives him like this side eye, like, don't say anything wrong now. You keep that yarn spinning, buddy. It's like, yeah, this is also propaganda bullshit. The war is not gonna end. Or at least you don't fucking know it. You don't know anything. It's just like based on very, very flawed intelligence, and you're just telling that to keep the people on fighting and invested, and, you know, keep your shit, your facade up. And it's like this really interesting and intricate look at war propaganda and how to motivate the forces and everything. And Lena believes that too in the beginning, and she also believes that 86ers are allowed to retire after serving in the army for 5 years. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, you see the situation of war and you're like, I don't think that's the truth. I don't think that will happen. In general, I've thought the show did a really good job at portraying how badly the 86ers are treated and how their image really in this society is like subhuman and just being basically another set of machines, just like the machines they're piloting. And they're not treating as anything such. And when Lena in the classroom confronts some of the cadets and tells them, no, this is all propaganda, this is how it really is, these fucking machines are not controlled by AIs, they are controlled by people, and people are dying each day in this war, and the army is hiding that from you. All the cadets are saying, but they're just 86ers, right? So that's not a problem because they're not human. They're just fucking garbage pigs, and they don't belong in this society anyway, and they're just only live to die for us. And it's like, holy shit.
Well, there's the root of your problem right there.
Yes, like all the people in the army, and probably the public as well, are so heavily indoctrinated that this is okay for them for some reason. It's fucking terrifying. And it's something that you can imagine can happen if you convey that message for a long time in a long-running war, that might somehow drip into the minds of people, and some people might actually think that way. It has happened before. And it's really terrifying, it's really sad, it's horrible. Like, and the show does a really good job at portraying that, in my opinion. And yeah, then Lena tries to do something again instead with her limited tool set. And the first thing she tries to do is to form an actual relationship with the people in her unit, to actually, become friends in a way and share, show them that she respects them and everything, and she respects what they do for their country. But she's a bit too idealistic when it comes to that, because pretty quickly. I think it already happens in the second episode. She gets told off by one of the Spearhead squad members after one of their comrades die. And he tells her, we don't fight for ideals. We fight because we are forced to. So everyone who makes us do it is a white pig to us, and so are you. And she didn't even ask for their real names before that, which he also throws in her face. She just used their call signs. So he basically calls her a hypocrite. And it's a really, like, it just almost destroys her, because there's truth to that, right? She didn't really pay that much attention. She was so focused on creating this superficial, I don't know, idealized way of handling her troops that she, again, treated them more like machines. And it really gets to her, and she's really distraught. And her friend tells her to let it go because she can't change anything about the situation anyway. But Lena talks to Shin and manages to convey her feelings to the group to an extent. Even though they still don't see her as a comrade after that, as long as she is sitting, safely behind the walls of the capital anyway, they are now taking her more seriously. So, you see, oh, okay, she's starting to get there, and they're starting to form some bonds and some relationships, and that gets extended on very much later in the show. Lena is constantly trying her best to throw herself and her idealism against the unwavering walls of racism, despair, resignation, cowardice, ignorance, greed, and hopelessness that makes up the will of most of the people of her country, and especially her government. And you always think like, holy shit, girl, if you keep going at that pace, this will destroy you. But she is very headstrong. And she's very, very much, this is her mission. And she wants to make things better for the 86ers. And it makes her a super likable character through the course of the show. Like, not I said, in the beginning, she's a bit naive. She's a bit too idealistic. But that gets better and better over the course of the season. And she grows very much as a character. And she has some fucking kick-ass moments. Like, she has one of the best moments in the show. Where she does something where it's really like, again, one of my favorite moments, or kind of moments where it's like, you want to just fucking pump your fist in the air and like, yes, that's how you fucking do it. And she has at least two moments where she does some really, really cool shit. And, considering that she's not really part of the battle in a physical way, but only behind the computer screen, it's really, really cool that they actually managed to pull something like that off. So I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed her character. I think she's great. She's a really cool character, a cool female lead, and just a general good person. And yeah, that's really neat. She was definitely one of my favorites in the show. And yeah, the other main character, of course, is Shin. Again, Undertaker. And yeah, he, like I said, is the captain, leader, processor of the Spearhead unit. And we very quickly get the feeling that something is up with him, that he maybe has a very specific mission aside from, protecting the country, because that's what they kind of exist now for. And that, aside from also protecting his unit, which is his main mission, but there's something that drives him. You feel like, okay, there's something that really pushes him. And you're wondering what that is. And that is related to a lot of other stuff that later gets revealed in the show. And again, I can't give it away. Some of that is related to Lena. Some of that is related to the opposing forces and everything. So it's really, really interesting to see where they go with that. Shin is like this very seasoned. He's has been in the military for 4 years, and after 5 years they're supposed to retire. So I think it's 4 years or 4.5. And yeah, he has lived through a lot of different units and was always the last man standing, which is also one of the reasons why he has the name Undertaker. He has seen over 500 friends and comrades in arms die, and he etches the names of the fallen soldiers into a piece of their tanks because of a promise made in his first unit, and because the 86ers don't get graves. So he carves a small piece out of the juggernaut of a friend who died, and then carves their name into it, and then puts it like in this box where he keeps all the different little metal pieces. And he has over 500 now. And this is one of his rituals that you see him do in the show when one of the characters from his unit dies. And it's like this really nice thing where it's like immediately, oh, okay, this is how he honors his fallen comrades. And he cannot do much. Sometimes, there's not enough time to actually bury the characters, or, you have to destroy them with the juggernaut in it or stuff like that. And then that's all he can do. And it's really heartbreaking, but also, again, makes him a pretty cool character. And judging from what you hear about him, that, somehow the handlers are driven to suicide, you wonder, whoa, what the fuck is he doing with them? What is, is he like the meanest asshole on the planet? Is he like, I don't know, reverse hacking them and find something out about them and then systematically destroying their lives or something? I don't know. But no, seems like a really nice person when you meet him. He's very soft-spoken in a way. He's very reserved. He is never really loses his shit or anything. And that makes you even more curious in regards to what happened to the handlers. What I also enjoyed is the support robot of the 86ers, of the Spearhead Squadron, which is it doesn't look like a dog, but they treat it like a dog. It's kind of like Dog from Half-Life, I guess.
Oh.
They call him Fido. And yeah, they treat him like a dog, and he also acts like a dog. It sometimes, moves its head in a specific way or starts to fucking hop around on its legs like a very excited dog. It's really cute for a giant like this giant weird square robot. But I enjoyed Fido a lot. I thought it was really neat, and it's adorable. Fido is adorable, and there's like this fantastic and heartbreaking sequence at the end of the penultimate episode that highlights its place in and relevance to the unit. And it was really well done, which I didn't expect. And it's like, oh, okay, even Fido has a reason why it belongs here and why it belongs in Spearhead. And I don't know, that got me. That was really neat and really well done, and also extended on some of the other characters in the show. And yeah, didn't expect that. Was a really nice surprise. This series also does an interesting thing where it sometimes shows conversations or what led up to those conversations, first from the perspective of the 86ers, and then in the second half of the episode from Lena's perspective, or vice versa. So, we see an event that leads up to a confrontation in the war from the Spearhead Squadron, from their point of view, and what led up to that. And then we end that scene or that part of the show with something Lena says to them. And then we jump back in time and start the day over from Lena's perspective, and then lead up to that moment where they have an actual conversation with each other during the battle. And that was a neat idea. They do that a couple of times, or several times, and then you see some things and you wonder, okay, wait, how did we end up here? What led up to this? And where's Lena in all this? And then in the second part of the episode, we get shown that. It's an interesting type of nonlinear storytelling, which I enjoyed. And I didn't feel like it took any impact away from the scenes that it led up to. So, cool idea. I wonder if we will see that more often in its second season, because, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a neat idea, neat trick. What I didn't like so much were, and that's a general thing now, like My Hero Academia does this also way too often, the credits roll super early sometimes, and there are very important scenes afterwards. So, for people who are not familiar with after credits scenes, I mean, Marvel did their thing to establish that shit, stay through the credits. But in anime, it's a different thing. And like I said, My Hero Academia sometimes did it, where there were some very essential, cool scenes after the credits. And in this, I don't understand it, because sometimes there's the most important scenes in the fucking episode happen after the fucking credits. And why would you do that? Why would you fucking risk anyone not seeing this scene? It's so integral. There are so many scenes that are integral to the character development of certain characters, plot revelations, some weird cool twists and surprises. All of that shit happens after the credits roll. And I don't understand why they put that there. I don't understand why they could not just put the credits at the end of the fucking show. I mean, yes, I get that some, the credits, of course, have a certain song, a certain ending song, which is pretty cool, by the way. And they sometimes want to roll that music on a specific scene. And the thing they do is they stop that scene. It's a stop frame, a pause frame, and then the music starts, and we get that frame in different colors and shit like that. And then after that, the show continues. And I mean, that's a stylistic choice, but again, I wouldn't risk people just skipping further ahead or to the next episode if they binge watch this shit once they see the credits roll. It's a bad idea. You either, I don't know, you somehow have to educate people on that first, because otherwise they will be completely lost. And you can always look at your how many minutes are remaining, and if you see, okay, wait, there's like 1/3 of the episode left, then okay, there's a lot of stuff coming after the credits. But I don't know how many people are actually doing that. So yeah,
I mean, if you get your credit roll 18 minutes into a 24-minute time slot, I would hope you would have enough wherewithal to stick around after the fact.
Yes, me too. But everyone watches their shows differently. And some people don't watch the OPs at all. Some people don't watch the EDs at all. And these people maybe see the ED, maybe see the credits and like, okay, the episode is over. Don't look at the fucking timeline and go next episode. And these people are fucked in this show. They are so fucked because there's so much stuff they're missing out on. And they would think, oh, what the fuck? No, they didn't explain this. No, not what the fuck is happening here. So if you intend to watch this show, dear listeners, always watch through the end credits, because I can't even remember a single episode that actually ended with the end credits and not with the next episode preview. So please, I implore you, watch all through the credits. Or skip through the ending credits and then keep watching the rest of the episode. But definitely don't skip to the next episode once the end credits roll, because then the episode isn't over. A couple of things I liked. The show is not black and white when it comes to, at least not completely, when it comes to its characterization of the Alba and the 86ers. There's one character later, Suga, the XO of Spearhead, who explains to Lena that there's also a lot of scum in the ranks of the 86ers. So it's like, hey, okay, we might not deserve this shit, but also we're no saints. And I like that they put it in there. They could have, let this be like completely a black and white affair and said, Leia, the Alba are all pieces of shit, and the 86ers are completely innocent, nice characters all the way through who are completely abused and used for the war efforts. And, partially that is true because there's some really good people in there. But just like Sugar says, not all of them are good guys. But still, we don't deserve this treatment. So it's interesting that the show goes there and doesn't, try to make this at least one-sided thing. It doesn't make it too simple for itself. And I always appreciate that when shows are more complex than they need to be, quote unquote. For this story, it didn't need to be, but it makes it feel more grounded and more real. So again, enjoyed that very much. What you also like, John, is the OP changes. Every time someone dies, there's a single shot, a single screen in that OP that adds that character to the ranks of the fallen characters in the show. So very yes, very sad. It's very sad, but it's a neat thing they do again, which kind of relates to how Shin is honoring his comrades, his fallen comrades. So it's a neat thing. And like I said, the awesome combat choreography is hampered a bit by the cut frames on the CG. Regardless, the show has enough kick-ass moments, especially when it comes to our two main characters, Shin and Lena. Like I said, for Lena, even more so outside the actual battles, where she just kicks major ass by being who she is and doesn't put up with certain character shit anymore. You love to see it. And of course, when that Salvano drops, it fucking drops. So that's a really good thing. And I always enjoyed that during the battle scenes. So this felt like a very, very quick, short show. I blazed through it. I let the episodes pile up, and then I think I like I said, I blazed through it in the course of 1 or 2 days because these episodes are really fast-paced. The plot is really fast-paced. There's a lot of shit happening, a lot of characters, a lot of character development, some, neat surprises, some neat twists. So yeah, I was never bored. I can imagine several places the second season can go to, but I don't even know if we need one. We will get one. In fact, it's gonna hit in a couple of, days. It hits on October 2nd. That's when the second season starts streaming on Crunchyroll, just like the first one is.
That's soon.
Yes, very soon. So if you listen to this review and you are like, hey, this sounds interesting, this sounds cool, I am in the mood for shit like that, you don't have to wait too long for the second season to drop, so you can watch the blaze through the first season now, and then you can probably start immediately with the second season. So that's cool. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if we really need a second season. There's more light novel material, sure. And the war obviously isn't over yet, because when is it ever? But the first season is a pretty tight, kind of self-contained war story that works rather well as a standalone thing, in my opinion. Which is neat, because if the second season sucks, I can just ignore it. Like I did with everything related to Psycho-Pass after its stellar first and abysmal second season. Like I said, it's open-ended. There are a lot of places where a second season can go to. So yeah, that might be interesting to see. But again, this first season, just on its own, is a pretty cool war story. And if you're in the mood for that, something kind of like I said, in the vein of Iron-Blooded Orphan Season 1, go check this one out. I don't think you will be disappointed.
So, after that war, it's time for a different war, a future war. I mean,
Tomorrow War, some might say.
Yeah, I guess 86 is kind of a future war as well, huh?
Yes. But yeah, I don't know. Both of these feel like, okay, aside from us not having any mechs, but they still feel like kind of down to earth stories in a way, even though they have some really advanced sci-fi shit in it.
Mm. So yeah, the next show on the docket, as I said during the intro, is Vivy, Fluorite Eyes Song. When highly evolved AI set out to eradicate mankind, the carnage that ensues fills the air with the stench of fresh blood and burning bodies. In a desperate bid to prevent the calamity from ever occurring, a scientist bets everything on a remnant from the past. Turning the clock back 100 years, AIs are already an integral part of human society, programmed with specific missions meant to be carried out for their entire course of operation. Vivy, the first ever autonomous AI, is a songstress tasked with spreading happiness through her voice. In a theme park where she hardly ever gets a proper audience, she strives to pour her heart out into her performances, bound to repeat it day after day. That is, until an advanced AI from the future appears before her and enlists her help in stopping a devastating war 100 years in the making. With no time to process the revelation that flips her world upside down, Vivy is catapulted into a century-long journey to avert the violent history yet to come. So, Vivy is a show that is produced by Wit Studio, which I don't really think needs much of an introduction at this point. If you've listened to us.
Yeah, exactly. We have reviewed enough of Wit's shows, and I think we like pretty much
Titan and Vinland Saga and others.
I think we liked all of them. So
yeah, as far as I can recall.
Yeah. So this was something to look forward to once we found out that Wit was handling it. It was like, oh, okay, Wit. Sci-fi shit, AIs, divas, idols, I guess so.
I mean, this is probably the best Wit show that nobody really tuned into too much.
To be fair, it was a stellar season. So there were a lot of other shows that caught people's eyes. So it was a tough feat to go against those.
That's true. Plus, once again, another anime original, as far as I know. Had a lot of those this season.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think those need to happen, and I'm glad they happened quite often this time around.
Mm. So the show was directed largely by Shinpei Ezaki, who believe their name came up when you talked about Hanebado.
Quite possibly.
Yes. And worked on some other stuff like a few episodes of Attack on Titan, Blue Exorcist, Guilty Crown, Sengoku Basara, Samurai Kings.
The classic.
What a fucking trip.
Hmm.
Put your guns on, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the writing in the show was handled by Eiji Umehara, who's worked on stuff like Appleseed 13, Eden of the East, Lagrange, The Flower of Renee, Tomomi Kawaguchi, who also worked on Attack on Titan and a bit on Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress. But I think the big name that everyone was attracted to was one Tape Nagatsuki, who worked on this other little show. I don't know. We haven't talked about it here. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called ReZero, Starting Life Over in Another World. Mm-hmm. Maybe you heard of it.
Occasionally. I mean, none of us have watched it yet. I plan to. I don't know when. Probably after. I mean, I just watched the last episode of Black Clover, and I was thinking of picking up another show that I don't have to do review notes on. So either that or jump over to Dragon Quest. We'll see. But ReZero is definitely, after hearing so much good things about it over the past years, even though, it's an isekai, it's a light novel thing. So there's like this, okay, maybe. But yeah, like I said, I've heard a lot of good things. So I will watch it eventually. I just don't know when yet.
It sounds like it does at least enough to differentiate it from everything else. There's so many isekais.
Yes, you have to pick out the good ones, otherwise you will go insane.
Music was done by one Satoru Kosaki, who we spoke about briefly during Beastars.
Music is a very important part in the show.
Yes, very important as it would turn out, because, as she's said earlier, Vivy is a songstress robot, and she does a whole lot of singing. There's others. There's one other particular character later on that does some singing, but yes. Again, that's Vivy's big main to-do. But yeah, this story kind of starts off with like this glimpse into the future with this scientist who's doing his best to prevent the robot uprising, and that is what sets everything in motion. Vivy is this performance robot who works in the amusement park Nia Land, and she has a very, very small audience, but she has this one dedicated fan, this girl named Momoka, who tells her, you need to put your heart into things. Why can't you be? You're trying to entertain us, right? This is your calling. So that it's weird because it kind of changes her mindset a little bit at first, but then
I mean, she doesn't really understand what that means, right? That's her main problem. So she doesn't mean what it means to sing from her heart or to, sing with her heart and everything. She can't quite get a grasp on that because she's an AI. She isn't a human, and she doesn't really know what makes humans happy. And she's trying to fulfill her mission, her singular mission, because this is how AIs are programmed in this world. They try to give each AI multiple missions in their life, like handle this, and it didn't work. The AIs just couldn't deal with the responsibility, I guess, or just multi-thread processing. I have no idea what the problem is.
I was going to say no multitasking, no parallel processing, I guess, in AI in the future.
Apparently
seems like a little bit of a design oversight.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, that's how the AIs are designed in this world. Each gets a very specific mission, and so Diva's/Vivy's mission is to make people happy with her singing. And this is part of her journey to find out what that actually means, because a lot of these mission statements seem to be up to interpretation. And
yeah,
for Vivy, that's also like, okay, I I don't know how to actually achieve that, but I'm willing to find out. And then shit happens.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they sort of try to insinuate that Vivy is supposed to be like the big next gen AI, fully autonomous. We're getting a little bit of Mega Man X vibes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So, but a lot of the story is her learning about them, a lot of learning about herself, really, and trying to come to grips with this massive responsibility that's given to her by a robot from the future, this AI named Matsumoto, who appears to her as a cube. I guess you could call him a companion cube. You're welcome.
And thus Destiny wormed its way into this podcast.
Listen, I'm just talking about Portal. If you want to go on about ghosts and Destiny, we can do that. Something that wizard came from the moon.
I mean, we were just talking about Destiny before the show, so yeah, this I sense sinister intentions from you. From your end of the recording there. But anyway.
It just sort of came to me just now.
Yes, that's fine. All right, but yeah, Matsumoto was apparently the AI sent back by the scientists from the future, who we see in the very beginning, getting killed by the rioting AIs, and apparently that was his last thing, because Diva apparently is the only, or Vivy is the only AI that is still alive, quote unquote, in the time periods where the AI start to riot, from the time when the first seeds of that rebellion were sown. So she's that connection. She is that connection between past and future. And so the scientist is like, okay, if I need an agent, a confidant, someone who can help change the future, she's it. So he sends Matsumoto back to the past to get Vivy to join the mission, who in the beginning and for quite a while is very reluctant.
Yeah, I mean, how would you feel if someone came to you and said, listen, there's this thing that's going to happen 15 years from now. I need you to do this, and this. How would you react?
Well,
even as a robot, how would you react?
It all ends up with a lottery win. I'd be like, yeah, sure.
I guess the only way I'd believe that is if I came back to myself, but then, that's some space-time continuum shit and, blinking yourself out of existence if you spot yourself.
I mean, Matsumoto's kind of, let's say, coy about it at points, but also he's very straightforward, and it's like, hey, do you want me to tell you the fucking lottery numbers for tomorrow? Like, what the fuck? What else do I need to do to convince you? Jesus Christ, you're so fucking stuck up. And that's kind of cool. I mean, he sometimes really got on my nerves as well, where he's like, he talks very fast and very much, which sounds a lot like me, but still, maybe that's why he annoys me so much. But he is also, he has kind of this like really snide attitude to him, and very cynical in parts. Not as bad as Navi, which is like this, I don't know, this AI that handles Diva/Vivy's concert appearances or shit like that. And Navi really got on my nerves, at least until the very end, because there's a cool scene with that. But Matsumoto's like that as well. And like I said, he really talks really fast in very annoying ways sometimes. So that might get on your nerves if you don't like that. If you don't like that, why are you listening to this podcast? But he is also very useful. He can hack pretty much anything. He can create like these weird vehicles out of other cubes once, time progresses enough that these cubes are actually being developed. And he can make like this weird rectangular, I don't know, spaceship thingies who look super like Tetris reject things or whatever. It's really funny. But yeah, he can also upgrade Vivy with a highly effective combat program, which turns her into a complete badass. Which is also one of the best things about this show, the hand-to-hand combat scenes, which look ridiculous. This
is a very pretty and well-produced show, but the action scenes are, like, impeccable.
Yes, they're really good.
And, that is Wit Studios' pedigree. So
I guess, yeah.
if you've seen Attack on Titan, you know.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's not the exact same production crew, of course, on this, but there's probably some overlap, and also in general, there were some very capable people when it came to the camera movement and everything. There's a lot of movement in these action shots. Like while the characters are just battling it out, the camera is just swirling around them and zooming in and zooming out. And I always like when there's a lot of movement in the action scenes in anime, and it's still all you know what is going on the entirety of its runtime. Like during each battle scene, you have a complete feeling where you are in the environment. It's just so dynamic, and there's so much shit happening that it looks really fantastic. And man, yeah, Wit again did a really good job with the action scenes in this show. It's really great. Sound design also, there's some really, really crisp banging sound effects in this, explosions, hits traded and everything. And man, that shit looks just good. It looks really good. And, when you hear AI, singer, idol stuff, maybe trip to the future, blah, 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 more character-driven, which it is in a lot of parts, you don't necessarily think, oh, she's a fucking kick-ass Rambo robot, but she is. Like, she kicks so much ass in this show, it's ridiculous. Like I said, there are also a lot of quiet moments, but man, when she goes for it, Vivy fucking goes for it. Like there's like this really cool moment in the third chapter of the show at the end where like they incorporate the OP, which we haven't talked about, because that changes also sometimes. And also in general, that OP is fucking fantastic, the main OP of the show.
Oh, it's super good.
Yes, they incorporate that in the action scene of that particular episode. And it's so well done. It's so good. And the song in it is just fantastic, and it works so well with the scene. And man, it's so well choreographed. That was one of my highlights in this show, where it's just like, what's the name of the OP?
Sing My Pleasure.
Sing My Pleasure. Fantastic OP. I watched it every episode. It's not in the show from the beginning, and there's some variations on it, where sometimes Vivy just does it on stage in the very first time it happens. But there's a reason for that, is to show you that song happened actually in the show, that is part of the story, that she actually sang that, and it's not just the OP of this show. This is an actual song that she sings, and that also plays into that particular part of the story that happens right around that moment in the show, and is related to a different character. And the show does that a lot, where the songs that the insert songs that appear in the show are related to one of the characters, and are also related to Vivy and her life experience in that time period. Because we do a lot of time period hopping in this show. Because Vivy is an AI, so she is, I don't know if she's eternal, but she has a very long life expectancy, I guess. And
I mean, the story does take place over the course of 100 years.
Yes,
so.
Exactly. This is like kind of the polar opposite to 86, because that story takes place over the course of 5 months, and this is 100 years. So it's a really nice counter programming, I guess. But so that's what happens. So Vivy meets Matsumoto. They go on their first mission once he actually manages to convince her to do it. And then after like the first 2 episodes, we do a time jump, and then comes the next mission. And I think that's 15 years into the future?
10 or 15, yeah.
I think it was 15. And after that, we do another jump, and it's 5 years into the future. And then I think 40 or something, or 60? You get the idea. We also take we always take jumps into the future, and some stuff happened in between, and we get slowly filled in on that, of course. But it's like the show, no, there's actually a lot of time passed in this show. And we see that like in the advancements of science, AIs become more common, other things like spaceship stuff, and I don't know, comfort shit that wasn't available before, and the theme park where Vivy resides in the beginning, which is kind of her home, that also changes. There are holograms and shit like that. So it's neat to see that the show reflect that in its environments and be like, no, a lot of time passed and humanity advances. Which is also funny because some of that shit feels like it's kind of kicked off by what Vivy and Matsumoto do accidentally, which is kind of also like this funny thing. They know what will happen in the future, and Matsumoto has like these key moments. I think they're called singular points or singular events.
Singularity points, yeah.
Singularity points, right. And they know, okay, there's a key moment in history where this happens. And by the calculations of the professor or whoever who did it, or my calculations, Matsumoto says, we have to change this or the history will end up like it did before. So this is basically, they have like 4 or 5 or something of these singular points, and they have to change the outcome. But they don't know what happens after they've changed it. Will history be completely changed? Will only a small thing happen? What will happen after that? How will history change? And there's definitely some unexpected turns happening after they change some stuff. And, then again, plans don't really change from Matsumoto's side of things, where it's like, no, okay, this changed and that changed that in a way. But we still have to do this mission to change the future. But it's really interesting to see, like, for example, the best example probably is the 3rd chapter in this show, which is pretty tragic, but really good. And all of these chapters are very personal to Vivy in a way, because they are kind of related to her by always an AI being involved that is one of her sister models. That were created after her, because she was the first autonomous AI, but some AIs were built on her specs, I guess, or on her blueprints, and these are called sisters. And they also have a very particular, beautiful voice, and were supposed to be caretakers or singers or stuff like that. And every singular point kind of involves one of her sisters. So it's kind of has this like nice personal component, but also can get really harrowing in a way, depending on what happens to these sisters and when Vivy forms a connection to them. And I think this 3rd chapter is one of the most engaging ones in that regard, and also one of the most interesting ones, where it shows that changing the course of history will sometimes make things worse for people. There are some characters in this show, specifically in this show and specifically related to Vivy, who were off better before history was changed by Vivy and Matsumoto. And a lot of that makes you think, it's like, yeah, maybe they should, especially once you come to a conclusion by the end of the show, you're wondering like, okay, was this really what they should have done? Was this really necessary? Was it all worth it? And the show makes you think about that a lot. I don't know how you felt about it, John. Where do you feel like I felt like the show didn't really say like, yeah, this is definitely, this was necessary, and how they handled this was the right way and everything.
I think the simplest way I was able to boil it down was it comes down to the whole idea that, the needs of the many versus the needs of the few. And I feel like that's probably somewhat calculated by Matsumoto, because Matsumoto is very purpose driven. This is his goal. Oh, yeah. It is his mission to stop the robot
no distractions.
Apocalypse. Yes. Mm-hmm. We have to get from point A to point B. This is how we do it. I mean, and even at one point early on, when there's this incident that Vivy could help prevent, Matsumoto stops her and says, "You're deviating from the plan. This is it's not necessary that you do this." And it's like, oof, yeah, it's rough.
And
but
it really
it's
gets
also
you
necessary.
Yeah, that's the question. Is it? you would have,
I guess depending on the perspective.
Yeah, Matsumoto's always like, no, this wasn't part of the history book. This is not important. So we can't risk changing something about that because we don't know if it will negatively affect our mission. I can see his perspective, but it's also kind of shitty, especially since he wants Vivy's help. And, they're like this really odd couple in the beginning, because just like Vivy isn't really interested in helping him, and he has like this shitty attitude. He also doesn't really like that she is so flaky in the beginning, I guess, and he doesn't really consider her his partner. It's like, why do I have to deal with you? You're no combat bot. You're just a singer. You don't know what to do. I'm basically doing all the fucking work, and you're still like hammering me with these questions instead of doing your fucking job. Well, I'm willing to do everything to fulfill my mission, and you don't even know what your fucking mission is right now. What does this mean? Sing from your heart. You don't even know. You don't know what you're fucking doing. And he's not really getting angry or anything, but you always get the feeling that he's really annoyed with her at a lot of points in the show. And yeah, so a lot of the show is also about both Vivy trying to define her mission for herself and what that means to her in more ways than one. It gets kind of, I wouldn't say complicated, but it gets kind of complex when it comes to her deviating missions, because making everyone happy, not necessarily even through her voice, but in general, making everyone happy and fulfilling the mission she got from Matsumoto don't always, let's say, work together.
Yeah, there's some mutual exclusion in there.
Yeah, and that leads to some very problematic things when it comes to her character as well. And that's her part of the story, trying to define that, trying to find that out, trying to work through all the problems that result from that. And on Matsumoto's side of things, it's trying to first get to work together, learn to work together with Vivy, accepting her, respecting her, and then also giving her some more leash and giving himself some more leash and accepting that, you know, maybe it's good to sometimes stray from the mission. Maybe it's good to not be completely by the book. Maybe it's good to let certain things go and, you know, not be too obsessed about it. So it's very much, again, one of those dynamics where both characters learn from each other in a way. Not equally. I still feel like Vivy is the one that learns more in the story, but it's still, I like it. I like when we get two characters that are not fully formed yet, and through their shared experiences grow with each other, against each other, and become friends, I guess, colleagues, what you want to call it, partners, through that as well. And I think the show does a pretty good job at displaying that, at conveying that. How did you feel about that, John? What did you think? How did the show handle that aspect and their dynamic?
I thought, you know, it's definitely a story of opposites attract. You know, they're they couldn't be more different from one another. But, you know, as they go on, as you know, the parameters of the mission change, because they do. Thanks for altering the timeline, everyone. Of course, you know, it becomes a story of, you know, the two of them trying to figure things out together, I feel like. And there's this, they go from just at each other's throats pretty much to, you know, some level of trust.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, by the end, they are pretty much companions in a way, right? I mean, not in love or anything, not at all. But they feel like they can rely on each other, which is, I think, the most you can ask for. And there was like this really cool moment, also, I think, in the third chapter. I think in the beginning, Matsumoto always calls her diva. Also, kind of like, it feels like a bit like a jab, like he's making fun of her. And then there's like this kick-ass moment which in hindsight kind of also backfires later, but where she's like, no, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do this. And he's like, understood, Vivy. And he's like really determined because he likes that attitude about her. And he's really happy that she found like this forceful will inside of her. And it's like, okay, this is a person I can follow. This is a commander to me. This is someone that can lead me. And this is someone that I can trust. So that was a cool moment that, you know, they kind of walked that back a bit. But again, it's like that walking back, Matsumoto also learns from that. And again, learns that maybe admiring this kind of thing blindly and being very single-minded about your missions is not a good thing. So I like that. They went a bit back and forth there and between those two characters, and I thought it was really neat seeing that. It's not all perfect and everything. Some of those things are really handled very quickly. That was one of the main problems, I guess. I felt like some parts of the show felt a bit rushed.
I mean, a little bit, but also let's be real. if they went through the full 100 years.
No, I'm not asking for that.
So
I'm not insane.
So I think I don't know. I thought the pacing worked for me because they went from plot point to plot point, like the important relevant stuff, like the 40 years in between one singularity point to the next. Nothing super big or impactful happens that has a bearing on the main plot. Okay, fine. We got other shows that are currently airing and are finishing up that don't fucking know how to pace themselves, but we'll get to that eventually.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, there's some parts in the show where it feels like not enough attention is drawn to like an important revelation or something like that. And that feels like being part of the problem. It might be very deliberate, but it also sometimes feels like an oversight. Like there's a character that dies and that gets mentioned very much in passing, where it's a very important building block for another character that happened. And there's some characters in this show that go through several stages of development, and obscuring something of their origin is part of the, like I said, is intentional and part of the fun and part of the mystery. It's like, okay, what is that character actually about? Who is that character actually? But also some parts are very much like, wait, what? I missed this one sentence, and now I don't know what that character actually is about and why he did what he did. And it's like, you don't have to repeat that shit all the time, but also don't fucking rush past it. Like, linger on it a bit. Let this sink in. And the show sometimes, I felt like, didn't dedicate enough time to certain characters it otherwise spent a lot of time on. But when you finally get to that, that pivotal moment for that certain character, and like this twist in his or her story, and then it's just like, no, this happened, and whoosh, we go to the battle or whatever. It's like, what? Hey, slow down. you just did a major revelation here. Just maybe, I don't know, let that simmer a bit. And I don't know, that happened like 3 or 4 times in the show for me, where it's like, wait, what happened? And then I had to skip back. I was paying attention, but it moved past so quickly, and I was like, whoa, okay. That's weird. Maybe I'm just not used to that from anime, who love to repeat shit, important moments and important text passages and everything. But I don't know. That sometimes happened to me. It's just something that stuck out, where it's like, okay, weird. Why would you rush through this particular moment? Yeah, this was weird. But like I said, some of that is also intentional, where it's like, no, we want to keep the mystery up. And this show definitely rewards you probably watching it multiple times, because there are some small hints put in there in certain scenes that afterwards, when you go back, you're like, oh, okay, they foreshadowed this. They foreshadowed this character being actually about, this, and this character, actually, there's actually something more to this character. And if we paid attention to that moment in the show, we would have known beforehand. And, some of you might pick up on that on your first watch, but some of you might not. So maybe you're then, once certain twists and revelations happen to show, you may be a bit confused. It's like, wait, what? what is happening here? So, I don't know. Might happen, might not, but that's something you should be aware of. What you also should be aware of, again, this show also has after credit scenes. So definitely don't skip to the next episode once the credits roll. Again, there's a very, very important moment for one of the antagonists, I would say, after a particular end credit scene. And if I hadn't watched that, I would have been severely confused. So, again, please don't skip the ED. The ED is also great. So maybe also don't skip it for that reason. But yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad in a show whose centerpiece was music, the music was pretty fucking good throughout, too.
I mean, it ought to be.
Like, Sing My Pleasure, the first time you hear that, it just, bam, it hits you. But there's another song later on called Galaxy Anthem. It's so good. It's one of my favorites.
Yes, there's some really good songs in this show, and I enjoy pretty much all of them. And some of them are more somber, more heartfelt, more slow, and some are just like Sing My Pleasure, just fucking kick ass. And yeah, I mean, yes, of course, also a lot of good instrumental stuff, but like the insert songs are like the moments that you also want vocals in and everything. So that's great when they do that. Yeah. One thing I want to just highlight that stuck out to me at the beginning. I mean, it makes more sense in hindsight, but it was really fun. Where it's like we have this antagonistic faction called Twak, who is like this anti-AI terrorist group, who are basically the first opponents Vivy has to fight. And after like they turn up for like two times, at least with the third time, you get the feeling like, hey, if Matsumoto and Vivy would just kill fucking Twak, or Toke, I don't know how they're pronounced, history would solve itself, because everything Toke does is making things worse, completely, basically destroying their goals, because their goals is like getting rid of AIs or keeping AIs from going rogue, from dooming humanity, from becoming too powerful. And everything they do, really, in hindsight, if you let history run its course and Vivy and Matsumoto not interfering, makes things worse. It makes like completely counteracts their actual goal. And that is so funny to me. Like, everything they do kind of leads towards human extinction, because they give more power to the AIs in a way.
No, shut up. Don't worry about it.
It's so funny. It's like, dude, just fucking kill all of these idiots, and then maybe you have a very high chance of shit not going wrong. It's really funny. It's like, yeah, we want to stop the AIs from taking over. No, everything you do makes AI take over. You fucking idiots. I mean, they can't look into the future, but just like their planning is very short-sighted is all I'm saying. And after the second time, they should have gotten a grasp like, hey, we did that, and now AIs have more rights and more power. Okay, and after we did this, AIs are actually admired and are fully integrated into society. Everything we fucking do does the exact opposite of what we wanted to do. Maybe we should just fucking stop. Maybe we should disband this stupid terrorist organization, because apparently we don't know what the fuck we're doing.
No, shut up. It's fine.
So it was so hilarious to me. But yeah, there's kind of reason for them sticking around in a way, and that kind of gets, resolved at the end of the show in a way. But it was like, especially in the beginning, it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, you are so bad at your job. And yeah, it's just funny.
Something you had one job.
Yeah, absolutely. And failed at it completely. But yeah, there's also some interesting stuff with them happening throughout the course of the show, especially relating to one characters or two. And yeah, that is cool. The stuff with the sisters is cool. Like I said, it's very personal when it comes to Vivy and some of those stories. No, all of the stuff that happens to the sisters is kind of horrible.
It's mostly pretty tragic.
Yeah, it's really like, But again, that's also part of what, at the end, when it comes to Vivy actually, or let's say not the end, but the entirety of the show, Vivy figuring out what her mission means and what the, let's say, singing metaphor, because it kind of is also a metaphor in the show, means to her. And, all of that relates also to her family and meeting them, see some of them go. And yeah, that's really cool. I think they did that really well. I don't know. Did you have a favorite among the sisters? I don't want to go into spoilers, but
I'm not sure. I mean, because all the sisters were pretty interesting, but this was largely Vivy's story, so I was most invested in her.
Yeah, same. I mean, that's the point. And it's good that they focus so much on her, considering the short runtime of the show. So, and her and Matsumoto, and I guess one other character at the end, maybe a bit more. But, the rest are more like bit roles. Yeah, and I think, the finale is okay.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, it's just like, okay. Pretty okay ending. It's a bit cliche. And I don't know. I mean, I I got why they did what they did, but it felt like, yeah, we've kind of seen this before in a way, maybe in Symphogear or something, and it's just like, they could have done something more interesting with it. Let's say that, both in terms of what is actually responsible for the AIs going rogue, which is kind of like a very trite plot twist / device, and how they resolve that also. I mean, there's some neat twist to it in a way, but also it's just like, yeah, I've seen this before, and it's not really satisfying. The note that they end off on is not really that satisfying, and it kind of feels like, okay, we've spent so much time with that particular set of characters, and it's not, I don't feel like the ending is doing them complete justice. I mean, there might be another season, we don't know, but I feel like the story itself is finished. Like, it's over. That's done. It just feels like the story of the characters could have ended on a better note. And it was okay, like I said, but this definitely felt more like the journey is more important than the actual ending of the story, right? It is this kind of story. Don't expect to be wowed necessarily by the ending.
I mean, it would have been a fucking. I mean, they kind of do it at one point. It would have been a swerve, because you kind of see where things are gonna head anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But
yes,
there's at one point where all I could think of was that one bad ending screen in Chrono Trigger, where it just zooms out from the planet and all you see is, but the future refused to change. I was just like, oh! At first I was like, are they gonna? Is this it? Is this it?
Yeah,
man.
Maybe.
Oh.
That would have been, I mean, that would have been pretty ballsy, but they could have gone that way. Sure. Might have been more interesting. And like I said, it doesn't feel like a complete betrayal or anything the way it ends. It's like, it makes sense, and it's okay, and it's fine in a way, but it's also like, considering what came before this, you could have done a bit better with this. There was a better way to end this. I didn't write a better way down. I don't know if I can. I'm not a fucking screenwriter. But there is a way to make this feel more like a fulfilling ending and a more deserving ending to the characters that populated the story. And this one didn't feel like that all the way through, which is kind of disappointing, because the rest of the show is it's fucking stellar. Like, it's a fun ride all the way through. There's some really compelling, heartfelt stuff in it, some neat character development, some really interesting thought experiments when it comes to AIs and stuff like that, and cool sci-fi shit. So there's enough in here to like. It's just like, the ending could have been better. Could have been better. Maybe we'll get a second chance. I don't know. But Wit these days doesn't really seem to be into doing multiple season stuff anymore, because we're so burned out through Attack on Titan and having to do 3 seasons of that. That they're like, no, we're gonna do this single projects. I mean, we don't know if they're gonna do the second season of Vinland Saga yet.
Please do the second season of Vinland Saga at least.
I hope so. Maybe Mappa will take over. We don't know. We'll see. But yeah, of course, I would like them to do also the second season, because I love the first one. But what can you do? Whatever they decide, or the production committee decides. But yeah, like I said, there's enough in there to like. Some of the stuff I haven't mentioned yet. The OP changes several times, which we both like. You know, the different versions of that. You know, all have a different purpose to certain parts of the story, which is really neat. And also at the very end changes again, and that's also neat. I like these small details. There is this thing. Oh yeah, right. They do a cool thing, and we've seen this before, where often these close-ups on Vivy's face that are super detailed and look like they were handled by the literal same makeup artist as the female character faces in Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which was also a Studio Witch show, so it makes sense. I didn't look up if the same person was involved, but in Cabaneri, also the female faces had like these shots where they were like super detailed and looked really good, and like with incredible shading and glow effects and stuff like that. And that happens a lot in Vivy as well. So that's neat. I like that a lot. I would like more anime to do that. I mean, some people might find that distracting because suddenly the face looks different than it usually does in the show when it's more plain for animation's sake and everything. But I think having more detail in a specific scene, especially when it comes to the character emoting in a certain way, and the focus being on that's just a cool little detail that you don't really see in any other shows. Yeah. And it's just like this super detailed, well-colored, well-shaded version of that character face. You could call it off model if you want to, but I don't think that kind of fits. I don't think that fits the bill. I feel like it's more on model than the actual on model version of the character.
It's just a much more like hyper detailed version that, you know, I feel like is trying to grab your attention more. I don't know a good word, but, you know.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels like the show suddenly then, for like this short scene, is going from a TV series budget to a movie budget, or it's going back to detailed 80s anime movies or something like that, where you also saw this kind of shading more often, I guess. But yeah, John, I thought Vivy was a great show up to the very end. Again, then it still remains a good show. Which is totally fine in my book. Like, I feel there was a more interesting way to pull everything Vivy has experienced together at the end. But for me, this will do. And if this is all we get, this is still a very enjoyable show. Very neat anime original thing. A cool sci-fi story. Some neat stuff. Some neat ideas about AIs and everything. And, you know, some cool time travel shit, quote unquote. Although it's basically just her living through time and us skipping through important moments. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I feel like you did too.
Yeah, definitely. It was, you know, we like seeing good original shows, so this was a nice surprise this season.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. in a season full of good shit. You can't really put it any other way. And we got more good shit coming in the season finale.
Man, I thought it was going to be easy to pick a show of the season this time around, but oh no.
It's tough. It's really tough. I don't remember the last time we had a season that had pretty much, from all the shows that we watched, only had winners in it. Only had like real keepers, where it's like, yeah, all of these are really fucking goddamn good shows. And we'll talk more about that once we get to best of the season. But for now, Vivy is another good one. Great one in parts even. And I would say absolutely check it out if you're into that stuff, if you like sci-fi stuff, if you like stuff about robots, if you like stuff about time travel or time skips, I guess. And if you like idol / songstress stuff as well, then this show is for you. John, any other recommendation you would give about Vivy? Where can people watch it? That's maybe important.
See, just watch it, man. It's really good. It's really well produced. It's got great music and a lot of, you know, really good moments all throughout. And you can watch it on Funimation and, depending on where you live, Anime Lab or Wakanim. But yes, Vivy is a great show if you need a companion to put onto your TV cube. I brought it back around.
I hate you.
I guess this joke is just a ghost of its former self.
Stop it! And that is a wrap on the 118th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut.
So long, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
Old bonds are broken. New ones are forged.
As the curtain falls on the final banquet.